Asteroid of fear.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Men of the House podcast. All right, my voice is a little. The weather has changed. It's raining this morning and it's supposed to go from warm to colder throughout the day. So, and Buck's asleep. I do apologize for this coming at you late. And normally I would drop at midnight. However, I have had about 48 hours of some real stress. Kind of had to wind it down last night early. I mean, the day was just so full of taking care of things. So, but nevertheless, here we are. We're gonna do this on a Wednesday morning, and I'm gonna get it edited and uploaded fairly quickly. All right, so let's stick to the topic. Otherwise, I'll be on tangent. I'll be on a tangent, and I can do all this Saturday for Saturday's episode. Recap the week in the 48 hours. All right, so we're leaving off in New Braunfels. So my wife and I were kind of dating at the time, and like I said, she was kind of newly separated. Our kids were young, and I was not going to ask her to follow me. And not to mention, we'd both just come out of relationships. So yeah. So I left and moved to New Braunfels with Andrew. He was managing at the time, managing a front desk, and yeah, I moved over there, started looking for jobs. And this was kind of one of those times I remember we were driving to San Antonio or something, and actually, I was going to an interview maybe at a 24-hour fitness in San Antonio. Because remember, even though I was working at a resort, I had a bachelor's in health and kinese. I'd been working at a gym those last years, but they weren't really hiring any personal trainers. Then I went through a breakup and moved down just to kind of have a job. So, yeah, I think I was riding to a interview 24-hour fitness from New Braunfels to San Antonio. And I remember in Live Oak seeing this Gold's Gym, and I was like, maybe there. It's a lot closer, not too bad. Sometimes kind of like that feeling I got when the first time I saw one of my girlfriends at the University of Florida, and I just knew. There was a certain feeling inside that I kind of just knew. Like, I want to work there. I went back and started making it happen because, during this time when I first moved, I had some money saved up. And so I was just studying for my NASM CPT exam, got that taken care of. Took me 2 tries. It's pretty hard. Definitely 100% expensive to retake the test. So that wasn't great, but got that done. Was interviewing, passed that Golds, and then went ahead and applied for the application there. I might have made a phone call, got the interview, and got the job. And so began my journey into being a personal trainer. So that was kind of good times. And then Andrew and I ended up moving into some employee housing for the resort he worked at, where all the family had kind of lived before. So we had a little 3-2 older style house, but big, kind of cool setup for like 600 a month. And because at first, when I first moved, we were staying in his 1 bedroom apartment, and I'd sleep on the couch. Or he'd sleep on the couch and I'd sleep on the floor, mostly because his bed was full of laundry. Yeah, so we moved in there and I was doing training, which I enjoyed. There were portions I didn't enjoy, which was, being gold. It's this huge corporate style thing, and I'd come from a small private gym where, it was just trainers and front desk me, and they kind of sold their own thing, got their own clients. There was no sales force. But now you're going into a corporate environment where you have a sales team and the training staff, a GM, AGM, that whole structure versus owner and employees. But the thing I did not like was, man, it was so focused on sales. So, the sales team, they're focused on sales. Let them sell. Trainers should be focused on training. Now, if you have a client or you met someone, yeah, then it's appropriate to sign them up. Or let's say let's say a Salesforce person signed up a client for 12 sessions. 12 sessions ends, they want to sign up with you again. Hey, sit down and fill out the paperwork for the sessions or have a team member do it. But man, they over focused the trainers on sales. It's like we had to be salespeople too, had to make cold calls. And, it's like, well, why does a sales team got nothing extra to do, but the trainers do? We could be doing other things. There could be personal development. There could be, I don't know. I digress. But I'm sure there'll be some comments of people who probably disagree, but whatever. If you like that, then you like that. Gold's is successful, so I'm sure their model works. But, like with any corporation, it becomes money, 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 and gets diluted. It becomes about volume. So, yeah, I really didn't dig that. And during this process, um, yeah, so at some point in time, my wife, we were, I guess, corresponding back and forth, and, you know, her and her ex had decided the arrangements, and she was going to come to New Braunfels for a bit. I know what you're thinking. How could a mother not be with her children all the time? Well, very unique circumstances. The same way people would look at mine and her ex-husband's relationship. At that time in life, they were little, and my wife's ex, they're Puerto Rican, so kind of like me, Latino family, very close, multi-generational. And at that time, and my wife's parents are the complete opposite, and it's just different. So, I don't think they would have offered any assistance in terms of helping her as a single mom, where the ex had grandparents, one stay at home grandparent. Um, and that was their only grandkids and probably would be their only grandkids. And they would be spoiled and well taken care of. And my wife was like, I know they'll always be loved and taken care of due to the dynamics of that family and, the multi generational, the stay at home. And so, yeah, it was what was best for the children at the time. And I've probably spoken about this on some solo episodes, but too often adults get consumed with winning in a divorce, and the children become objects that they fight over, and they become this thing of They don't really want them, but they just don't want you to have them. There's a big difference. It's like playing to win versus playing not to lose. And, you know, I'm a rational person, I think. And so I had probably discussed this with her, I'm sure. And so, yeah, that's what happened. So if the girls ever hear this, they'll know. But so she moved over to New Braunfels into the house with us, and yeah, we started there. But then it was around that time. Well, she ended up getting a job at a hospital near the gym where I worked, and um, at some point, Andrew was not. His job just wasn't hashing out, and he probably had enough of that because he'd run front desks at multiple places, and so he got rid of that job, and then he ended up working at a golf course, but the pay was trash compared to his management. And, when things like that happen or something just, and you have to totally switch and pivot, you're just burnt out and exhausted from years of pushing the envelope. The same way I left Florida and came back to Texas, it was time now for him to go from New Braunfels to Dallas with his mom and his sister and kind of ground himself around family and pivot, reset, and move in a different direction. So he did that, and we were no longer going to be available to live in employee housing. So, yeah, a week later, we moved to Austin. I don't know if I'm having deja vu. I said this in the previous podcast. My mind's slipping. It's been a long couple weeks. Everything's run together. So forgive me if I already told this. Listen again, because I'm going to take you all the way through Austin. And then next week on Christmas Day, I'll probably give you from moving back here to losing my job to where I'm at. All right, so yeah, we were no longer going to be in that employee housing, and so I was disen, what do you call it? Like, not necessarily disenchanted, but I didn't like that whole sales bullshit and golds and the corporate structure and just the watered downness of it all. So I, I don't even know if we had computers then, and I don't even know how I figured this out. No, I did have. I had a laptop. I remember old Gateway that I'd used in undergrad. Yeah, that's what it was. I'd cooked for a long time, so I just started applying to different things, and I ended up getting an interview at the Hills Country Club in Lakeway, Texas. Because I guess my wife and I were like, well, it's time to do something different. Oh, on that note, Valentine's Day when we were living in Braunfels, 2006, she was like, she was going to get me an iPod because they were like real new then, like one of the big ones, and or a tattoo. And we ended up getting matching tattoos together. Or not matching tattoos, we both ended up getting tattoos on that day. Mine was bigger. So yeah, that right there, come on. Ooh, yeah, the cancer symbol looks like a 69. Mm. So yeah, I went and interviewed at the Hills, and a week later we moved to Austin. And when I was having my interview, Layla was interviewing, and yeah, I still talk to her. So it's wild to think about. How'd you know the person you saw sitting in the chair in between interviews would end up knowing you for guess it's about the same length of time I've known my wife, 2006, 18 years. Yeah. I remember it was October because the when you walk through the kitchen, they were making like Oreo dirt cake with worms and that whole Halloween spooky thing that they do around that time. The black Oreos crushed up and it, black and orange and all that. So I do remember that. And while I interviewed and I think I got the job, we then, you know, came up and found an apartment. And we were lucky enough to move into some new builds, brand new apartments, Northwest Austin, 183 in Anderson Mill. The only fucked up thing about that period of time was we had a bunch of cash and I felt like we had closed our checking accounts or something, or we were in between banks. And so normally you need first, last security deposit. And we had it all, and the people were in cash, and they were like, "Well, we don't take cash." And I'm like, "Who does not take cash? Like, cash is king." And the little apartment finder dude had to drive us to Wood Forest within Walmart so we could get a money order. Yeah, we went down there, packed up, rented a little truck, and a week later, we were living in Austin. I was working at the Hills Country Club, and I don't know what Gabby was doing. I think she got a job like at this kind of those extended stay hotels that was like a couple doors down from our new apartments because it was just like a job. She needed a job. I had a job. Oh, and when Andrew had left, he had gotten a dog. Actually, interesting story. So there's a guy named Justin in that little neighborhood who also worked at the same resort, and he had a rat terrier named Pork Chop. And Andrew would always call him Peanut, forgetting it was Pork Chop or. And so when I knew Gabby was moving down here, Andrew and I went to the Humane Society, and I said, well, she doesn't know anyone here. I'm going to be working, you're going to be working. And until she gets a job, then she could be lonely. So I was like, well, maybe we'll get her a dog. And I went with him, or he went with me, because I was going to get her a dog. And then he ended up getting a dog, a rat terrier named Peanut, a rescue. And I can remember Peanut, he had a little chunk out of his ear and he was shaking the whole way, like almost like he'd been thrown in a bag because he ended up not liking garbage bags and tossed out or something. So he ended up with us. Yeah, because when Andrew left for it, so Andrew ended up with the dog. And then when he left, his mom and sister already had a dog. And so, and cats, and he wasn't going to be able to bring them. So Gabby and I kept Peanut. And I think we just put him, passed away last year around Thanksgiving, right before, maybe. Hmm. So, yeah, and the reason I remember that is because I was saying she got that job at that extended stay, and there was like a couple of, like a boat shop, maybe a couple, and a car shop. And one time he got off his leash and was running through this parking lots and went all the way to where she worked, and she had to chase him down. Yeah, so we started making our way in Austin, our life, and we spent, you know, 2006 to 2015 there. Yeah, or maybe it was 2007. I don't remember. But yeah, what I remember was we were super poor, and this was kind of like back in the days, like streaming may have not been huge, 2006, 2007. But our solution was library. We had a library right around the corner from our house. We'd go there, we'd rent the seasons of like The Sopranos, watched a lot of seasons on stuff, DVDs. But that's kind of when I go back to that time was of when I talk about spending time with the person as the prize, and then it gets diluted. And I always think back to this time because we didn't have a lot, but we had each other. And here we still are. Sunday's our wedding anniversary of 12 years, and April of 2025 will be 19 years together. So, yeah, we had a lot of fun. I can remember probably only had one TV, and I felt like we had like this mattress thing where we would pull our mattress off the bed and roll it into the living room and just spend the whole day watching DVDs from the library. Yeah, good times. And I could pick up free kind of Wi-Fi from someone who, and this will tie back from someone in our building, and it was spotty, shoddy, hit or miss sometimes. And that gateway wasn't the best laptop. So, so yeah, there were some fun times. The Hills was good. My first time working at a country club, so a little bit different because sometimes you got dinners and things to serve or events, plus you might have to serve people in the dining room of the country club. And, the other part of it was brunch, almost like a nightmare, especially if you're on the egg station. You just know you're walking into a ticket that's got, 12 omelets or something. Yeah. But there was a lot of good times, and Layla and I ended up becoming friends, and she didn't live too far from us. So Layla and I became carpool partners. Yeah, so we'd switch up driving out to the hills when we drove together and all of that. Since we were all poor, probably saving a little gas money. But man, there was a lot of good times there. It was interesting. It was fun. A lot of wild people, a lot of crazy people, as is the restaurant business. Yeah, we had some good times. And then I don't know, trying to think. I know Gabby worked there, and then she got a job like um, seasonal wrapping presents at J.C. Penney from somebody she knew in our apartment complex. And then she ended up at the hospital, Seton Northwest. And she started off in dietary because I think she'd done that. That's what she did in when we lived in New Braunfels, and she worked off Judson at Baptist. She worked in dietary, so she ended up getting a job, and it was very close to our house, a couple exits up. And when she started that, I don't know what it was. I think our sous chef had quit, and I kind of wanted to be the sous chef, but I didn't think I would get it, or I didn't think the pay was much more. Or there was something, and then they ended up kind of hiring someone else, and I was like, I think it's time to do something different, because I had kind of fallen back on cooking skills for like temporary, just because I'd done a lot of it in Florida, and I didn't, I was disenchanted with the whole personal training thing, so I wasn't going to do that again. Even though I might have applied to 24-hour fitness somewhere around our house. And then, yeah, health and kinesiology, pre-med major. She started working in the hospital, so I got the idea to work in the hospital. So I think I had applied to a front desk position because that's what I'd worked when I was in college. Registration. Went down for the interview. This was at BRAC, downtown Austin, used to be the old county hospital, level one trauma center. And the registration person, I don't think was interested, so I thought maybe it was just registration for the ER, but that registration had passed my uh, application onto the emergency room, and they wanted a senior clerk. So I had no idea. Interview went well. I got the job. I look back and I'm like, man, I'm so thankful. Registration passed on me, but passed my application. It's funny how things all work out and how one thing leads to the next. So things were kind of looking up for us. We were in better positions. She was, I was working nights in the ER and got some shift differentials and whatnot. And I think so. She was at Seton Northwest doing that, and we were living along in life. And one of the interesting things that happened was, I remember I was walking Peanut one day, and the news cameras outside came up and asked to interview me, and it was because they busted a prostitution sting in the building we lived in, number 7, but we were on opposite ends of the building. And my wife and I don't know, we were kind of, that end of the parking lot would have some pretty swanky cars show up. And you're like, why is this car here, living here? But then they'd always leave, or there'd be multiple. And they were like asking me if I knew, and so yeah, I got to be on the news and answer that. I was wearing a Fat Dogs t-shirt from the old place that used to be Fat Dogs and or the Half Moon Bar and Grill, whatever it was in Gresham. And I remember kind of mentioning that some of the cars didn't fit the other cars. And then also my free Wi-Fi was gone. That's how I knew. 100% for sure. So, yeah. But during this time, I remember, my wife was in dietary and it's partial cooking, partial making trays, delivering trays. And, she's so people friendly and people like her a lot. And she's a hard worker. And she was always delivering the med surge. And, there was somebody there who particularly just liked her and connected with her and was like, hey, we're going to have a medical assistant position come open. You should apply. And I remember her talking to me about it and, kind of being nervous. Speaking of which, I'm like jiggling my legs underneath them. A lot of nervous energy this morning. But, my wife, our relationship dynamic, she is everything I am not. She's more caring, nurture, even killed. We're both hard workers. She didn't do as well as in school as me, and she doesn't feel as confident in her abilities. It doesn't mean she's not. Sometimes she just needs some encouragement. And I think that's where I come in, leveling her up. And, she talked to me about it and she thought she could do it, some of it, but she was super nervous about having to take the phlebotomy course. And it was offered through ACC, like once you got hired or you accepted the position. She was nervous about having to do that, didn't know if she could learn all this stuff, the anatomy portion of it and all that. But I guess at that time in our lives. I can't remember that time in our relationship. I mean, I was definitely, because having traveled and been very whatever, I would think I was the one that pushed us back to Austin and was just the more hard charger, you know, just different as it should be. I should, yeah. And I encouraged her to do it, and she did it. She got through the course, and then she started working nights. Yeah, so we were on the same schedule. That was the thing. Yeah, that was the thing. And then we spent a lot of years in this configuration. So during this time, it's like our wages are going up. We're getting less poor. We're moving in the right directions. We're having things like health insurance and this and that, the other, making our way. And then I happen to work with, there was a medical assistant in the ER I used to work with. Him and his wife were getting ready to relocate near her parents because they were having children's or more of them. And he was in a nursing program at Baylor in Dallas. So they had a house out in Cedar Creek, which is in between Austin and Bastrop. And he's like, we're moving, we want to rent. And we had kind of been pissed off at our apartments because the corner unit across from us was a two-bedroom corner unit. And at this time, we were now financially in a place that we could get a two-bedroom. We were ready to upgrade, and we wanted to move into that apartment because we knew that people were moving out. And then we just have to move our shit across the hall diagonally. And then the balcony overlooked the field instead of the parking lot. And it was corner. So, yeah. And in between this time, we went and talked to the office. This big ass hail storm happened in Austin. I mean, to the point where it was like um, you had to pay for cover parking. We didn't pay for the $35 little awning thing. And we're sitting there and we're like, it's small hail. And we're standing on the balcony, Gabby and I. And all of a sudden, you see something and you're like, you start seeing windows shatter. And then we look at our cars and it's like, boom, starting to shatter. The hail was big. And so, her car got a lot. My car, both windshields got busted out, like 20 some holes in the front, same in the back. Um, it was a hot mess, 100%. And we had like an Audi or Mercedes dealer behind us, man. They got jacked. But yeah, so this hailstorm happens. We talk to the office. We're going to move across the way. And this is like on a Friday. And I'm like, okay, I'll come back Monday with the deposit. And I go back Monday. And they're like, oh no, we rented it. And I'm like, what? And all of a sudden, these people move in. And it's like two couples. And they got these trailers. They're from somewhere else. They're these people, like, that follow storms and damage. So, like, roofing, you probably got a knock on your door, like, if you, after a storm and hail damage, like, hey, we can repair your roof and blah, 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 blah. Well, these people, they repair cars. I think that's what it was, maybe. They had like a couple of trailers and so yeah, that pissed me off because we were already looking actually at even moving to different apartments within Austin, but you get older and all that. You're like, man, if we can just move across the hall, you can slowly, you don't have to do all the boxes, the moving trucks. And that's why we ultimately were like, yeah, this, because we had some great places, man. We looked at a 2 bedroom. Layla ended up living in these. I cannot remember the name, but we were looking at a 2 bedroom, identical bedrooms, but then it had a third loft, like an office that I thought was really cool. Man, if I could go back now with, like, I'd love to have my podcast set up there, the loft. So yeah, that pissed me off, and hence when Jacob was like, "We're gonna rent our house," I said, "Yeah." I think it was 925 or 975, somewhere in between there, for a 3-2 house in Cedar Creek, and the only available internet out there was HughesNet, which is garbage. It was internet included, but you know, yeah. So we packed up. Shout out to Axel and Lucas for helping me move, because it was one of those where we had all worked overnight, got off at 7 a.m. I went and picked up the truck. They met me, and we spent all day moving our stuff from the third floor to the house. And that was kind of one of those things, too. I think we were at a point in life where, like, you know, you age and mature enough that you're like, fuck the third floor. All the groceries, all the bullshit. It's like, oh no, fuck that. Get tired of walking up the stairs all the time, even though it's good for you. So yeah, they helped us move into the house, and yeah, I forgot about this till now. We get everything unloaded, and we have the windows open and stuff, and it's kind of hot because um, we get everything unloaded. You got the doors and garage and everything open because you're moving shit in. So you're like, um, yeah, we get it all moved in. We shut everything. We're like, we'll turn the AC on now. Cracked a couple of cold beers. I remember Axel sitting by the fireplace, and it's like, bro, how long's the AC been on? It's fucking hot in here. Oh, well, turns out the first day we move in, uh, the AC went out. So remember, I had already been working. I'd been up 24 hours at this point, and you're just dirty, sweaty, grimy, and it's not working. I contact Jacob and one of my other friends in the ER, Mark and Tyrone. We had been visiting with them and um, over to their house and this and that, and we were good friends. And he said, they were in Canada because he's from Canada. And so you got a reminder, we had peanut too, and it was just too hot. We couldn't do all that. And he's like, just go over to our house. We're in Canada. There's keys here. Make yourself at home. And, once it gets fixed. And we'll be home in days. So you got plenty of time. So we went out to his little ranch in Dale, Texas. Um, so it's like, yeah, you have the whole day, been up all day, you unpack everything, you think you're going to kind of settle into your new digs. Now we're packing a peanut, and some of our stuff, oh man, it was like dark. We're trying to arrange all this, and I think we still had to drop off the U-Haul before we went out there in order to, like, not get charged another day. That was part of the urgency, like one of those, like, 1 day rentals, because it's cheaper. So yeah, because we'd already planned to return it, but it was just one of those things where now you're dealing with something else. So we finally get all that done. You're dark, peanuts hot. We're in the U-Haul. I think we return it. I think. Or we might have drove it to Mark's and had to return it the next day. But then it's like, we got to get to Mark's. Then we got to still get showered. Man, yeah, exhausting. Thankfully, we had people that would look out for us, and we were able to get some rest and do all that. And during this point too, we lived at that new build on the third floor, so at this time we'd never seen scorpions. But for those of you who don't know, the Texas Hill Country is chock full of scorpions. And so we lived 3.5 years having never seen a scorpion. And we were at Mark's one time. I remember seeing one on the floor, and he's like, "Oh yeah, they come in on the plants when I bring the plants in." And he's like, "They get in the lights above us, see?" And I was like, "Oh boy." So he was the one that would give me the recommendation to, spray demon in the house and all that. And so actually, before when we bought the house or started renting it, before we moved our stuff in, I did go and spray because while it was empty and all the baseboards, and did kill a scorpion and all that. And yeah, because we had Peanut and we didn't want him to get bit and all that. And so, yeah, that was one of the things you always dealt with in Austin and the surrounding area. But the AC got fixed. We finally got moved in and started life there. And this configuration would last for a while, and it was a good configuration of life, I think. Because you got to remember, um, part of the upgrading our lives was because, if we go back to my wife and the older daughters, and if you go back and listen to an episode, I think it's my second one, like First Days, Last Days, and Exes, and it talks about the relationship that her and the ex have. Well, when they had decided all this, because like I said, I'm a logical person. Um, the great thing is we didn't follow no court rules or court orders. It was as long as we had time, we'd go over there and visit. We'd meet in Hempstead to pick them up, meet halfway. We'd go there, they'd come to Austin, and that was part of the getting a house was now, hey, we had extra room for the kids. And, we pay child support. Yeah, the white pay child support. So, but it was kind of like a tribe mentality, like, it it takes a tribe to raise kids. And, so it was like, hey, in the summer, because my wife and I, in the hospitals, you work 312s unless you're doing OT. So we could have the kids a lot longer periods or go visit them a lot longer periods, especially like in the summer and school breaks and whatnot. So that's why that configuration was really good at that time within having the kids and, you know, my wife and the ex not choosing to be so strict like it's your weekend, it's my weekend, no, you can't have them here, blah, 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 blah. Fucking parent people are so fucking selfish. That's fucking drives me bananas. I have a couple people I'm thinking of right now that so fucking petty. And the kid's the only one who really fucking suffers over some parents' bullshit, self-inflated entitlement ego of they should have it. It's more important. I'm more important. No, parents. Your fucking child needs both. Okay, however the configuration is, but just be adults and act like it. Don't make your fucking child suffer because you're an asshole. As Andrew used to say, asshole face. We're going explicit. That's right. We're telling the truth. That's what we're doing, being authentic. Yeah. Mm. So that's why that was great. And I am just trying to think, man, we had some good times. And then also Gabby's youngest brother, he would come, and my cousin, who's now old, like he's like a year older, or maybe, yeah, than the other girls. So, and he had lived with me when I was an undergrad. Me, my grandmother, and my uncle all lived together. And, I've known him since he was lived around him since he was 4 months old because my grandmother raised him, my mom, everybody chipped in. It's a multi-generational family affair. Everybody contributes. So yeah, life was going along. We're doing all that. Um, what's notable? Probably my time in the ER. That's probably my people at the last clinic I managed, and then the ER. Some of the best people I've worked with, doctors, nurses, and all that. Yeah, working in a level one trauma center, you learn a lot about life. Chicken today, feathers tomorrow. Anything can happen. Appreciate. Tell your people you love them. Try to be yourself. Don't be fake. That helped me a lot. But then every once in a while, you'll see as the story continues. But I definitely felt truest to myself in this environment because it's a lot like the kitchen, which I'd spent a lot of time in. And meanwhile, like we still know Layla. Um, yeah, I can remember in between moves or coming and staying at the house. So, and she ended up leaving the hills and went to some other places and has done a lot of different things. Yeah, we just loved Austin. We actually, at that time, we didn't have the money, maybe, or the credit score to buy the house, and we didn't know. And so, if we really wanted right there, because, we moved there pre Circuit of the Americas, and they built it kind of while we were living there. And we really thought we were going to stay and maybe buy the house, especially like with Circuit of the Americas popping up. Man, I wish we had. That thing would be probably tripled in price just because it was like one little four-way stop at Wolf Lane, and boom, you're you're there, man. Hmm. But yeah, my time in the ER, I saw sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction. See a lot of sad things, see some funny things, some things you'd never believe. Work with some of the best people you'll ever work with. Some of the worst too. Yeah. And this is when Brack was in the old building before they built the medical school. 2009 to 2015, that's when I worked there. Try to think about how much I want to say. What I mean? I've held people's legs, held their arms, their ears, put them on ice, tagged them for pathology. I've seen everything. People's faces blown off, stabbed. Seen people high and drunk get pinned under a car and be fine. I've seen air EMS intubate somebody speaking Czechoslovakian because they thought he was AMS, not just speaking a foreign language. That's what happens when you get PHI out of LaGrange, Texas. They're probably Podunk Helicopter Services or something. Probably what the PHI stands for. Um, yeah, but I just learned so much in that ER because Brack, being the old county hospital, wasn't as glamorous and nice as the other places, but it's the place you want to be if you're in real trouble. Yeah, I don't want to over go in depth because I could tell story after story. But it's a lot like I imagine the military being, like regular military and then uh, special operations. That's what working in a level one trauma center felt like. You feel different than everyone else. Yeah, so probably in a couple events that were on CNN, like uh, there was a guy who ran over like 16 people at Red River. I took that phone call and was the senior clerk on the crash side with Buglia as the charge, and it became this. I think that's when people saw my real abilities. I took that phone call. It's a couple blocks down. How many can you take? Asked Chris. Boom. All of a sudden, we're moving people out to the desks, and we took quite a few, maybe 12. I don't know. But he ran through the barriers, maybe running away from the cops. And my role in this was because I normally put in all the orders, so it was like, and they would register them, and there was a lot of trauma patients. So sometimes they, even if they don't have ID or for the sake of time, you have registration pre-reg as a trauma patient, and you can go back and merge the accounts later. But that way we could get all the bands printed out. We could start putting in orders because we know they're going to need like X-ray CTs. Everybody's going to need like a baseline of stuff. And I mean, it was just bananas. But I took this sheet of paper and I arranged it somehow to like who had what, and was standing next to the charge nurse, kind of like she's got the big picture managing the whole big thing. And I'm like her little kind of tracker, keeper upper with also the nurses because it's my job to fix shit and make it happen and kind of just really move the situation forward. You know, people used to say I was kind of like radar in the ER. Like sometimes I'd have the answer when nobody else did, or um, I was just always there. But yeah, that that little thing, I think maybe I got recognized briefly, but people started to respect me a little more when they see you step up to the plate and what you're capable of. Yeah, and we'd had another one similar where I think a balcony collapsed and a bunch of college kids. I mean, femur fractures at the desk. It was a lot of people. Um, you know, rot rallies and stuff like that. Shootings. I can remember Art Acevedo. I want to say someone was shot on our campus, point blank. I was walking with the charge nurse. We're walking from treatment to crash, and we hear code gray, code gray. We go out into the waiting room because we're right by the door, and they're like, this lady runs in, like, he just shot him, point blank. And so now we're getting the crash stretcher, and everybody's running down, and, you know, this patient or this guy was just visiting somewhere, and he's down at the corner smoking and talking to somebody. And we had a psych patient who was released, had a backpack, and he thought those two people were talking about him, and he shot the dude point blank in the chest. And yeah, they opened up his chest. We're doing the heart massage, all that stuff. I think maybe Dr. Cotty even got his finger cut because I mean they were like slicing and dicing in there, and I think they nicked like, I don't know what was the liver, which bled a little. I mean the guy already had the death poop when he came in. So it would have been a miracle. Yeah, things got stepped up. Cameras up. The cameras started working. Then there was metal detectors, all kinds of stuff. Security got stepped up after that because, that guy had been in our ER with a gun the whole time. And I'm sure there's been some other ones. A lot of good memories. But the thing was at that time, um, I'd been doing it a while, 5, 6 years. And with that role, there's no lateral vertical movement. And I just kind of didn't know what step to take. I didn't want to be a nurse. I didn't want to, I knew what I didn't want. Let's put it that way. But I knew I needed something like we were comfortable and I felt antsy. And my wife's like, well, why don't you go to graduate school? And I was like, because I don't want to go back to school. I'm like, I did it. I proved that I could do it. But, has it, I don't know if it's really helped me. And I don't even know how. What? I don't know if I was tossing the idea around, but my mom was working for this director or no, he was a manager at the time. And he and another person were in this program, the EHCA program, Executive Healthcare Administration. Uh, yeah. And it was this hybrid model. And I don't know, because I have no fucking clue why. I was like, maybe I will consider doing what I don't want to do. Um, I'm glad I did. So yeah, maybe I talked to this dude about the program, investigated it, because I was probably looking at like semester wise and timelines, and I could stay in Austin and travel. You go there for like a week. Remember, I was working only 3 shifts a week, and by that time, I worked weekends straight 3.5 years, like Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Then I was like Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And then by this time, I was, because other people come in, I wasn't in college and they need to work the weekends because they go to school during the week. So by the time I was in those couple of years, I was on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 7P to 7A. Every Friday through Monday off. Pretty dope. Could see why one would be comfortable. And that probably, though, having all those weekends off, that's probably what uh, made me sense and need this growth. Because you got to remember, you work 3.5 years and you're working like a Saturday night for 4 years, whatever it was. I don't know how long I worked that last schedule, but that's where all the excitement is. I mean, sometimes you get some during the week, but not as much as like Friday, Saturday nights. So we were growing up, the kids were getting older, we're more settled, and I needed something. Maybe having every weekend off was shit. I don't remember. Or you're out with everyone else. And I think working in the ER, that's kind of what I loved about it was, I didn't want to be out with everyone else unless it was doing something like seeing a show or, man, we had so much fun during these times. I remember we took Peanut to South Padre. One night that was a fun trip, like 11 at night. Like Gabby and I had all this time off, and we're like, well, I remember looking on the computer, booking the hotel, and we packed up Peanut to a La Quinta, and we said we were going to spend the $650 for the ocean front, like right on the ocean. And we drove through the night. while it was cool, it was pretty awesome. Stayed there. Those were some good times. Being able to do that, being able to be that spontaneous, and man, in the summer we stayed like right across the way from it too. It was like next door, but it's turned into something else. Man, I think about that time of our life and relationship. Really good. So anyway, I think I ended up starting the healthcare program, and it was this thing: you come up and you do an intense week with your cohort, and then you go back and you do the rest. I ended up having to get with your, over Zoom and all that kind of stuff, and projects together and your individual stuff. So now I had something to fill my weekends. And so we're trucking along doing that. I think it was South Padre maybe that Gabby and I decided to get married. It was. As an only child, she said I needed a kid because I didn't have any siblings or anyone to help take care of me when I got older. Because we were common law by then. We've been together 6 years, and I wasn't really about marriage or about bringing the law into. I do it for my wife, but if you ask me, just because you go to church doesn't mean you necessarily believe in God or have the faith, real faith. And just because you're married doesn't mean that your relationship is any less, you know, scandalous, kind of. It doesn't mean people aren't married and don't cheat. And, you know, because people would think, like, oh, well, he didn't want to get married because he's got the freedom, blah, blah, blah. No, we were common law. We already shared all kinds of shit. I just am not traditional. I mean, my views are different, obviously. I'm good friends with my husband's ex and all that. I mean, but I didn't think you needed all this stuff because we'd already been together 6 years. You don't need all that to, it doesn't mean you're going to stay together. It doesn't mean anything. It's just kind of something putting legality into it. People doing the right things. But, to her point, her credit actually was we have a child. She wants us to be married. She doesn't want to have to explain maybe why she's got a different last name, I got a different last name, and all this stuff. So, kind of for the family structure. So, I was like, okay, I guess we'll get married. We picked out an engagement ring. We're trucking along, probably planning all this stuff. I'm in school, probably just started. Or maybe I was married, I don't know. No, because we had Sophie, I think, when I started. Yeah, we did. Yeah, I'm thinking of when I moved back and started here. Yeah. I remember working it. We started saving for the wedding and all that, and we were going to plan it and looking at honeymoon things. And late one night on TripAdvisor or some shit, I find a good deal on a trip to San Francisco. And, I talked about a lot of people within the ER, like, they're like, fly to like Washington or somewhere and drive down to like California where the PCH is on your right instead of driving up. And so I was like considering something like that and thinking of ideas, researching stuff, and trip to San Francisco came across, and it was a good price. It was like maybe $1,300 for flight, hotel, everything. Like maybe 4 nights or 5 nights, 6 days. I don't know what it was. And I remember like 2 in the morning. we had X amount, and we were like, well, do we think we can get married? I'm like, yeah. I was actually telling Buck this story last night, and I think I left this piece out, but um, how it ended up on December 22nd. So I probably, maybe I bought the trip and then we went to book it. Maybe it was through Groupon. Now that I think about it, I bet it was. And we booked it for March around spring break, before or after, because I think what it was is maybe the kids were doing something for spring break that we were not going to be able to participate in because they have family in Puerto Rico and New York. So they were probably flying out somewhere, and their aunt works for the airline. And so they had buddy passes. And so I was like, well, we can just do this because they're going to be doing this. And that's so we booked it. And so now we kind of needed to be married, I guess. I don't think we were married before I booked it. I'm pretty sure because I think this is how we budgeted it. So we paid whatever it was for this, $1,300. And yeah, probably, yeah. And then now we got to get married. So we start planning all that. Except this is probably October, I'm guessing. I don't know, I hadn't started school yet. I hadn't started my master's. Yeah, because my daughter was 2013. I started my master's in 2014. We're talking about marriage here. So we're planning. We find the location, little place on Stone Lake. I'm working, trained a lady, Rita. Her husband Charles was a pastor. He was going to marry us. At this time, Andrew was sorting himself out, and he and I hadn't talked in a long time. And, I was particularly akin to Mark and Tyrone, because Mark ended up being the best man in my wedding. Mark and Tyrone are together. They are not a straight couple. So, but that was kind of awesome. And at this time, like 2012, it wasn't a big deal. Like, we had so many gay men in the ER. I mean, you were, could you do your job? In a level one trauma center, like, are you legit? Or are you just a bullshitter? I don't care what color you are. I don't care what your preference is. Nobody does. Either you can do the job or you can't. Either you're contributing to the team and adding value or you're not. And that's why it's strange to me that it's gotten so wonky. Like, I just felt like, but maybe Austin is one of those places where it's very accepted. But I mean, I've always felt that way. I've just never been, you do you. How about that? As long as you don't push it on me, I really don't care. But, because there's always been this thing of like, should two men have a baby or raise a kid? I'm like, yes. There's married, whatever you want to call it, traditional couples who can't raise kids well. Yeah, it boils down to the people. What kind of person are you? It doesn't matter if you're gay, straight. Um, are you a good human? And are you going to put 100% into doing your best and doing so at whatever it is? Raising kids, your job, treating people equally with respect, just not being a dick or an asshole face. So, yeah. Um, so Mark ended up being my best man. Charles was a pastor. Ken, the judge nurse, was a photographer. Um, it was coming along, and yeah, the girls were in the wedding. December 22nd, that means they were out of school, so I'm sure that had something to do with it. Maybe the kids were going to spend Christmas with us, or they were maybe that was our time before Christmas because they were going to go home and spend Christmas with their dad and grandparents. I bet you that was it too. And they needed to participate in the wedding because at the ceremony, we had a heart and all of us had different hearts and different color sands and we pour into one big heart to be blended. So, yeah, December 22nd, 2012. This place has the best green chili pork, but man, our menu was great. The chicken was stuffing and the carnitas, the salmon. It's all like over a wood fire. We got married on like this little glassed in patio that was long and it was wonderful. I remember I stayed at Mark's the night before and shout out to Vin. That was my wife's, her best friend. Yeah, she was the best woman or I don't know. What do they call them? Bridesmaid. I almost forgot. Um, so yeah, we get married and what we had and what we spent on San Francisco and what we were taking to San Francisco, that probably determined the budget of the wedding. But the most expensive thing was the food. I had probably a $200 suit that I had for interviews, probably that I wore to probably to interview for no. There was a place called Modus in the mall, and it would be like $200, and they measure you. And so yeah, I had that. I stayed at Mark's. Oh my God, that was the thing. We were almost late to the wedding, and at this time, I want to say we were sharing a car. Remember, my car was all hell damaged out, and the water pump broke. I just left it, paid it off because I had $5,500 of damage, and I only owed 2,000. So when the water pump went out and it was going to be like 2,000 to fix it, I was like, fuck, but I sold it for $1,000. Whoever would come and get it. And Gabby and I shared a car. We had a little Suzuki we bought it with 80 miles on it from CarMax. The payment was like 189 a month. So that was great. And our schedule allowed us to, you know, sometimes I would take it if she, whatever, or she'd drop me off a little early at the ER. I'd go sit down and eat. And yeah, this was downtown. So we did that for a while. And so then I think took Gabby to the wedding, and me and Mark were in our car, and we had to stop and get gas. We were hauling ass, and he lived way out in Dale, and we're like Northwest Austin. It was like, oh fuck, I'm gonna be late to my own wedding. Oh, I remember running in there, and I was like, you're like out of breath. I was much heftier then too. Oh yeah, probably working on my second fat. Man, man, man. Yeah, because this will give context to stuff now. So yeah, we get married, and now we're Mr. and Mrs. Kraft, and um, go to San Francisco. That was great. And if anybody wonders why I chose San Francisco, is because I had never been, but you got the Golden Gate Bridge, you got Alcatraz. It's very walkable. And one of our CT techs was telling me about this double decker bus. You get a pass for 2.5 days, and there's 22 stops around the city, and that's what we used as transportation. And the Rolly Roadie truck and all that on the Embarcadero. Chris Cosentino's places. Yeah, that's why I chose it. I booked a Bay to Bay or Bridge to Bridge cruise for Gabby and I. But quite a few people, doctors and other people, had been there and told me it was great. And so, and one of my other favorite nurses, Paul Singh, shout out if you're listening, um, big influence on getting me to start taking blood pressure medication. It's like, it's $4 now. You know, your PP's not going to work. It's the silent killer. Do you want that? No. So, shout out to Paul. Always very rational. Always, yeah, like the older brother I never had. I love that dude. Interestingly enough, his wife worked in the lab at Christus in New Braunfels, and not knowing we would become connected. So we go to San Francisco in March. Pretty sure that's when Sophie was conceived because she was born in November. The air was just right. A lot of fun. So it's 2013. So she's conceived in March. We find out we're pregnant. Okay, what are we going to do now? Now it is time to. So my grandmother had this extra car that she'd gotten for my cousin, and my cousin moved, or I don't know what happened. She was not available somehow, some way. Remember, I come from a family of outlaws, and so I needed a car because I had sold mine. We were now pregnant, and we traded this Suzuki for Big Red, the van my wife now has. She did not want a minivan, but this Dodge Caravan, they were at CarMax. They were like enterprise rental vehicles that had like 18,000 miles on it or 12,000. Low mileage, right price, all the stow and go. The stow and go was the deciding factor because we were having a kid and she already had the other kids. And, we saw them, traveled with them and all that, and drove back and forth a lot. Lots of luggage. So that's how we ended up in the minivan. And I can remember when my daughter was getting ready to be born, I was talking to people. It must have been in the water because there was like so many dudes, like men and women, either pregnant or the spouses of us working in the ER that were all pregnant at the same time, everybody having babies around the same time. And I'm asking people like for pediatricians and this and that. And, my wife's due like the next week. And the only thing we're talking about is this is our last weekend together before our daughter's born. Where do we want to eat? And what movie do we want to go see in the theater? And I had recently just given my wife the charge nurse number to say if I was never available from that other one, call them if you're in labor. And I'm literally asking, we're talking, this is the things we're discussing, and hey, your wife's on the phone. Babe, my water just broke. And I start like, oh, okay, do you need me to come get you? Do you call EMS? I don't know how this works because you're delivering 45 minutes away at Seton Northwest. And I would still have to come home 17 miles, and then we got to go. And it's like maybe 10 till 2 in the morning. And she's like, just come home, get me. I think I'll be fine. And I start giving his nurse back. I'm like, our water broke. And I start spinning it around. He's like, I was like, do I need to sign out, bro? He goes, just fucking go. We got it. We got you. Uh, so yeah, I drove and we got there and went to the hospital and maybe 2:30 in the morning. But Sophie, I don't think was born till 10 or 11. I do not remember. It was a while. It was a long day, night, all of it. And Gabby's mom came over and yeah, it's made me smile a lot. Getting to cut the umbilical cord. Life changed forever. Now our going out was no longer to the movies and out to eat or going to South Padre in the middle of the night. It was Let's go to Costco for formula and diapers, and maybe she's old enough we can have a seat. Like, oh, mandolas, a lot of, or, And then I think that was kind of the point where it's like, hey, I need to. She was born in 2013, and I started school in 2014. Hmm. So somewhere in between there, probably realizing I'm going to be a dad and that I needed growth, I ended up in a master's program. And I was driving back and forth, um, doing the school, doing the thing. One day I'm off work and driving home. It's early in the morning. It's icy, kind of snowy, semi. It's December. And, you know, Gabby had thought it'd be a good idea because I was in school and I could get a job at a hospital once I graduated from a master's, that we moved near her parents or my parents. So I applied to jobs in the Conroe Woodlands area, Houston. And then I applied for jobs where I'm from in Tyler, where I'd work, where my mom worked. We just said if we can get near one family. Because at this time I was in school. Um, and Sophie and my mom, so Sophie and Gabby, they would come with me when I go to my intense week, so I wouldn't have to be in a room all the time. Um, I get a call from a director, and they're interested in interviewing me for a practice manager, clinic manager position. And I know it's December because I'm like, okay, well, I had already taken off because, working those 3 shifts a week, that's also grad school. I could arrange my shifts, take PTO, and have 6 or 7 days off, or I mean, have 7 days off if I need to, up to 8 to go that intense week without actually having to take vacation days. It's the same way when we went to San Francisco and stuff. You work 3 back to back on kind of the butt to butt, and you get the long all the way around. And I said, well, I'm coming to my intense week. I guess I can. There's one kind of, or maybe I took an extra day, went up early and took off. But I ended up interviewing while I was there for my intense week of school. That was the scoop. But then the crappy thing was, well, not really. I had to go back for a second interview with all the doctors at a later date. And then I ended up getting the job. Yeah, it's December, go to intense week, have first interview, probably another interview in January or February. And then March 2015, March 3rd, which is my dad's birthday, 2015 was my last day at Brat ER. My dad and I weren't talking at that time for a long time, 10 years. And ended the employment. And I started at Mother Francis, the hospital I was born at, but I'm working at the Jacksonville location as a clinic manager. Started there March 23rd, 2015, which is also significant because that was the day I started boot camp, March 23rd, 1994. Yeah. So, yeah, you see how things kind of repeat patterns. And there we were. Thankfully, we had decided not to buy the house at that time. And because I think we wanted to buy it. And the reason, once I decided grad school and we were pregnant and we thought it'd be a good idea to be near family, one of our families, wherever the money was. That's what it was all about. Whoever was going to pay us and allow us to, my wife to stay home or work less or whatever. That's what it was about. So they were just the ones who called first. So we got out of our lease, or, it was that time they were going to rent it out now and or sell it. I forgot what it was. And um, she got rid of her job because she had gone to PRN because it was cheaper for me to carry us all on. No, yeah, it was cheaper now that we were married, all this stuff, and I could carry the whole family on like $17 a paycheck. Yeah, it's before everything was wonky. When you worked for a hospital that had their own insurance and didn't fuck you over like commercial health care. Oh, yeah. It was on a sliding scale, and I love that because it was like if you made $0 to $12, you paid $6 every 2 weeks. If you made zero or $13 to 20 something bucks, you paid double that. So you know, mine wasn't very much, but yeah, I was going to be making. I was probably making close to $18 an hour when I left Brack, and with your differentials, your base pay now is going to be getting 25 and change an hour. So, and we could I think my mom was married to someone else, and we would move in with my grandparents, where my mom lives now. Like, I think, I don't remember. It's been so long. Yeah, yeah. Family first, then I could look for a place. And then we moved to the Cascades. Yeah, yeah. So we will pick up there. 2015 till now. Coming next week on the 25th, rolling into 2025. Like a little 10-year recap of life. Which has been way more difficult. Austin was way more enjoyable, difficult at times, but we really relied on each other, and it was just some magical moments. Some great people I'm still talk to till this day. Love, like, and follow, and yeah, I could go back there. Maybe. I don't know. Mm-hmm. There's a lot I miss about it, but it's blown up, and there's a lot I wouldn't miss about it, and my priorities are different too. I'm not into going out and seeing shows and comedy every night. I got a daughter. I need to help her with homework. And when I, as the man, need to make sure we're all in bed and blah, 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 blah. Yeah. So maybe later in life, who knows? But till next time, go out and be the person you'd want to meet.
Asteroid of fear.